Are you ready to push the boundaries and take your company to the next level? I'm Stacy Goodman, founder of Origamic Solutions, and we're here to be your co-pilot, navigating you to operational excellence and helping you level up with love. Connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and at our website, origamicsolutions.com. That's ORIGAMIC solutions.com. Together, we will find solutions and prepare you to soar.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Mike King, Stacy Goodman, Tim Pisani. They are otherwise known as Origamic Solutions. All right, we're talking communication. Good communication skills is the bedrock of organizations. You know, knowledge transfer from leadership management to the team, from you to the client. Tim, sir, you are the sales guru of the operation. Let's talk about why communication skills are so important.
Sure. So when I come in, from the original point of an engagement, I want to be upfront, honest, and genuine with our intentions in an agreement, right? How we're going to help you and the long-term ramifications of that help, right? Our intention and our goal is not to be a forever solution. We want to actually empower individuals with the proper knowledge to continue to work effectively, even if we're not sitting right next to them. Now, we're always a resource. We're a phone call away, but a big part of our engagement is the education. So that's a lot of communication, a lot of one-on-one time, and I need to be able to talk somebody's language so it clicks for that person. And obviously that's different throughout every engagement.
All right, so Mike is here. The team is... I ask you a lot of times the upfront, when you're going in, what does the upfront look like? I don't know if we ever touched on the exit. Like, what is that like?
Well, the exit is determined from the beginning conversation because we need to figure out what's the goal and what does accomplished look like, right? There's a definition to that of success. So once that point comes to fruition, then it's another conversation. Hey, do we need to build additional infrastructure after this point? Is this a good stopping point for you? So there's a lot. It's not as easy to say like, okay, today's the 3rd of October. We're going to leave. Yeah, see you later.
Is there a deliverable that you guys?
Generally, yes. So we're hired to come in and do something, and there's always an output of that something. It may be a strategy, it may be, a design, but we don't implement. It may be the full implementation. And when we leave with a full implementation, generally we will be hired to also provide like the training, solution documentation and the training for that. When we do some of our work, like we're with smaller businesses, we're providing deliverables and pieces as we go, so it's not like a big final. Here you go.
Okay.
You've gotten it along the way iteratively. So it just really depends on the engagement. And we define that in the beginning. We set expectations of, all right, this is what we're going to do, and ultimately this would be our outcome. Will it take us the exact amount of that estimate? We don't know, because we're making an estimate based on what information we've been given. That doesn't necessarily mean that's what the situation is. And there is a discovery phase in everything that we do. So we have an investigation and discovery phase as part of our impact methodology for solutions delivery. We do the same thing every time. And so that yields what's going to happen, how many phases. So we do things in phases because for small businesses in particular, it helps them budget a little bit better in smaller pieces that will continue to move on. And that's where Tim was saying, okay, we're done, but do we have some more to do? Are you is it in your budget? Can we, are you ready to move there? With larger companies, we will break things up into phases or what we call an iteration. It's a smaller 2-week cycle. And in there, we'll define what the objective is to accomplish for that time period. But that helps to maintain and manage scope.
That is what I wanted to get to, ma'am. How do we control scope creep? Because, Tim, we know as a salesperson, Tim isn't the typical salesperson. He goes in with the idea, okay, let's keep it within the lines. The typical salesperson is there, the order's being given, can you Yes, we can.
Sure, we can.
Can you do it in 2 weeks? Of course we can.
Right.
And then you go back to the fortress.
And we say, no, we
Yeah,
can't.
no.
No, we can't.
Well, and we've had a client that I have 6 weeks and I need you to do this. And we're like, that's not probably going to happen in 6 weeks. What we can do in 6 weeks is this. And then if you want to continue on, we can continue on. I've had this happen with what you're describing as, sure we can, with the county, and it was about a decade ago. And that's when I was like, I'm going to need to come into the next meeting. They hadn't really, they had hooked the fish, so to say, but they hadn't reeled the fish in. And that way, that gave me and my boss an opportunity to go in and level set. Here's the approach. Here's what we can do. But because of either your time limitation, your budget limitation, this is what it can't do. And so the out of scope agreement is as important as the in scope agreement when you get into some larger, more complex things that the salespeople have said, yes, we can do that in 4 weeks. And it's naturally just going to be a 12-week process. So that's where, from those learnings, that's why I approach things in phases.
Alrighty, so communication is what you want to touch on today. And let's talk about the importance of that and get to the point of where you guys are and why it is what it is.
Right. So the communication aspect because there's lots of different aspects. To your point, we could talk about internal communications. We can talk about communications with clients up front. And the communication is important. It needs to be honest. It needs to be direct. I have a client, she said, I didn't hire you to be a yes person. And I didn't hire you to build a lot of PowerPoint slides. And it was, I was young and I'm like, yes, ma'am. But you're right. You hired me for what I know and my skill set. You didn't hire me to, coddle you and give you everything, make you feel good. You brought me in here to do what I need to do. So, that direct and forward-facing communication and trust that's built in that situation is important. The element I wanted to talk about, we're in our action phase, right? So our newsletter's coming out with a new blog around the A of our impact methodology for small business development. And that is around action. We talked about the SQUIRT model the other week. When you are getting ready to launch your solution, so you're making a change. It doesn't matter what the change is. I'm going to change the time of our meetings. I'm going to change we're going to release a new newsletter. We're going to do something. It's almost like marketing it, right? So you have a cadence or you do something ahead of time. You have got to let the people who are going to be impacted know what the change is, how it's going to impact them, why it's important that this change happens, because you need buy-in. If they reject the change, all the work you've done from planning and developing falls flat. And so in order to have a successful solution that is sustainable, which are the two major words in our vocabulary, we want sustainable, successful solutions. The communication has to be addressed. And so you have to think about the audience. How do you communicate to them what's coming their way? Make sure they get enough heads up, right? That they don't see it too far in advance and forget about it. It's got to be in a certain timeliness, a couple weeks, right? And sometimes it's repetitive. Sometimes it's a one-time thing. Sometimes it's a training session. You bring everybody physically in. You show them what's going on. There's a lot of different mechanisms that you can use, but the importance of it is that you recognize it needs to be done and you invest in the time and the efforts to get it done. Then you need to also, once it launches, do follow-up. You need to see, what challenges are you facing? What, things like that you can make enhancements and fix those things. So I have historically seen companies write off that. We'll just send an email. Okay, first of all, most people are not going to read the email.
No,
okay? So then I've seen a shift and transition to we're going to do a video, a launch video. But now, as I've been working with a couple of companies for a long period of time, the executives are catching on, and they're like, okay, we're going to do this and we're going to launch that, and I'm going to tell the executive team this. They're catching on that your change management and your preparation and your communications are as important as the development of the change, because it will not succeed without buy-in and acceptance.
There you go, Stacy Goodman on that. So Tim, Mike King here. Stacy dropped the A. Give us a real quick synopsis on the impact theory, how you guys do the methodology, so people understand where the A fits in.
Yeah, so through the first couple stages prior to that, like we talked about our investigation and discovery phase, let's figure out what's really going on, right? And then we're going to have measurements, going back to our numbers, which are super important in any business, to make educated decisions. Based on those decisions, we're going to create a great plan in order to make sure we can improve the specific metrics or pull the right lever, so to speak, to get your business where we want to go. Then we have a plan. Now it's time to execute. So our plans are going to include strategic components as well as tactical, right? So like, what's the high level stuff, and then how are we actually going to do it?
And the T?
The T, so it
The
depends.
C.
Yeah, well, the C we're going to control, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we talked about. Once something's new, we want to make sure it's going the right way, right? I'm not just going to put a new engine in a car, floor it, and then hope the oil line is tight. Like, I'm going to go in and check it out, make sure it's all good.
Okay, so this is after the action
Yeah,
part.
so-
We got to control this.
Now we have to control and stabilize it.
Okay.
Make sure you're good.
Right, it's like when you're cooking food, right? I'm going to taste it before I serve it to somebody.
Right.
Like, I want to make sure my cooking's done,
What?
right? And then T, depending on the type of engagement, we're either talking about transitioning or transparency. So we transition out, again, we provide that documentation for somebody to continue to execute on the new solution, or the transparency is the communication part, right? Here's how everything works, here's how it's going, here's how you can view the solution to make sure it's continuing to go well, etc.
Right. So in the viewing, that leads us into like our data visualization. So that is our graphs and charts and things that or dashboards that the executives look to watch the performance of whatever the change was.
So you sorry, you think that the leadership starts to get it and starts to implement the ideas that you're talking about because they realize life is easier and better.
That their solutions are more stable and they stick around longer. A human's natural tendency is to go to the path of least resistance.
Yes, ma'am.
And if they are feeling they don't like the new solution, they didn't buy into it, or they're just not compliant with the orders and directions that were given to them, because civilian life is not like the military. The military, you follow and do what you're supposed to. Here, they have more leniency. They will create their own version of a workaround solution. And that, for a process person like myself, we see them a lot. Oh, I created this Excel and I did it this way. Well, it circumvents the main design. So sometimes you lose data, sometimes, elements, because you're not collecting it. They're not as efficient, or, they, in their mind and in their silo,
It works.
it works. They don't necessarily understand the impact of that workaround collectively, across the whole organization or solution. And so there's a lot of times I'm like, you need to rein this back in. But the reining in is after the fact. Something's not gone well. That's why we're reining in. But if you're proactive with it and making sure that you get everybody, they understand why they're doing and why not to make this workaround, and to give it time to adjust. You have to adjust to something new, right? You get a new pair of shoes. They're not the most comfortable thing. So you got to break them in. Same thing goes with solutions.
Tim, how do you get management to understand to help them how to get buy-in?
Yeah,
That's a great idea, Tim. It's really, but my people, you've seen them over there.
right.
How do you help them work on the buy-in piece?
Well, I think there's two components. First one is delivering so it's not a surprise, right? People can handle bad news, quote unquote, right? Changing a process. Oh, well, I've done it, especially your seasoned employees. Like, I've been doing this for X amount of years. I don't really want to change. They can handle bad news, can't handle a surprise. So that goes into the planning aspect of communication. Give us a couple weeks. But then a deeper layer to that is explaining why we're making the change. It's not just because us in the executive suite got bored and we want to shake it up because we've been doing it. Like, there's an intention behind it, and I need you to understand why it's important, how it's going to be effective to the entire organization.
And there's strategies of how to get that.
Right. So if you can explain those two things and people have time to process how they're going to execute, then they understand why, which is really the most valuable part.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot easier to have that buy-in within your team versus just trying to ram a new solution down somebody's throat.
We are short on time. Newsletters coming out soon.
Yep.
What can people expect?
Yeah, so the 15th, so we're continuing through our impact methodology. We're continuing to build out some of our community engagements. So we love to shout out some nonprofits as well as some rising entrepreneurs, maybe bring them on for a show or two, start to highlight their businesses. So if you have individuals that you'd like to have engaged, get the word out there for them, please feel free to send them our way.
How can people get into contact with you?
Sure. Through all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn under Origamic Solutions. Stacy and I's pages on LinkedIn, Stacy Briley Goodman, Tim Pisani, as well as our website, origamicsolutions.com.
And you could send it to info
Yes.
at origamicsolutions.com if you want to just contact us.
Engage.
And engage or send a recommendation of a nonprofit or a rising entrepreneur, type of things that we may be able to engage with and help.
Origamic Solutions doing big things in the community. We'd like to thank you guys for coming on the mic with Mike. They're simply the best. They help you with your ordering processes to help you level up with love and to operate in a more efficient manner. We got to go. Thanks now, folks. Take care.